She became a millionaire overnight. 3 days later, she was standing at my door, begging. The day everything changed started like any other quiet morning. The kind where nothing feels unusual until life suddenly turns in a direction you never saw coming. My daughter was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling on her phone, when it rang. At first, she ignored it. Then it rang again. I could tell by the way her face changed when she finally answered that something serious was happening. Her eyes widened, her hand began to shake, and she stood up without saying a word, pacing back and forth as the voice on the other end kept talking. I caught fragments of the conversation, legal terms, numbers, and a tone that sounded far too formal for an ordinary call. When she finally hung up, she just stared at the wall, silent, as if her mind was trying to catch up with reality. Then she looked at me, tears forming in her eyes, and whispered that she had inherited $33 million. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I thought I had heard her wrong. 33 million was the kind of number you only hear in movies or read about in news headlines, not something that suddenly lands in the lap of a young woman who grew up in a modest home. I hugged her tightly, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude, thanking God over and over again. In my heart, I believed this blessing would finally give her the security I always wished I could provide. We sat together for a long time, talking about what this could mean for her future. I reminded her to move slowly, to seek good advice, and to stay grounded. She nodded, smiling, though I could sense her thoughts racing far ahead of the moment we were sharing. Soon, the house filled with phone calls, lawyers, financial advisors, people I had never heard of. Each call seemed to pull her further away from me, into a world that spoke a language I didn't understand. As the day went on, excitement turned into something else: restlessness, impatience, a strange distance I couldn't explain. She began talking about next steps, about changing her life, about finally being free. I listened, proud but uneasy, sensing a shift I wasn't ready to accept. The simple joy we shared that morning faded as the weight of the money settled in. It felt less like a gift and more like a door opening to a place where I might no longer belong. By nightfall, the house felt different. The same walls, the same furniture, but the air had changed. I watched my daughter move through the rooms with a new confidence, almost as if she were already somewhere else. That was the day everything changed, not because of the money itself, but because I realized that a single phone call had quietly redrawn the boundaries of our relationship. And I didn't yet know what it would cost me. It didn't take long for the money to start changing her. And what frightened me most was how quickly it happened. At first, it was subtle, small comments, a sharper tone, an impatience I had never heard in her voice before. She began correcting me when I spoke, as if my words suddenly carried less value. Advice I once gave freely, and she once welcomed, was now met with sighs or silence. I told myself she was overwhelmed, that anyone would be after such a shock. But deep down, I knew something more serious was unfolding. Her phone never left her hand. New names appeared on the screen, people speaking with confidence and authority, promising her a life she had never imagined. They praised her potential, her vision, her right to enjoy everything she had been denied before. Each conversation seemed to reinforce the idea that she no longer needed guidance from someone like me. I noticed how often she used words like my money and my decisions, drawing lines that had never existed between us before. Then came the changes in how she spoke about the past. The stories we once laughed about were suddenly described as struggles she wanted to forget. Our modest home became something she called temporary, a phase she was eager to leave behind. She talked about renovations, selling, relocating plans that didn't include my opinion, or even my presence. When I tried to remind her of where we came from, she brushed it off, saying that clinging to the past would only hold her back. What hurt most was the way she began to look at me, not with affection, but with irritation. My concerns were labeled as negativity. My caution was seen as jealousy or fear. She accused me of trying to control her, even though all I wanted was to protect her from making decisions she might regret. It felt like the bond we had built over a lifetime was being replaced by transactions and calculations. The house no longer felt like a shared space. She started rearranging things without asking, talking about how she wanted everything to reflect her new life. I realized that I was slowly becoming invisible, a reminder of a version of herself she no longer wanted to acknowledge. Every conversation felt like I was walking on thin ice, afraid that one wrong word would push her further away. By the end of those first days, it was painfully clear that the money wasn't just changing her circumstances, it was reshaping how she saw me. I wasn't her parent anymore in her eyes. I was an obstacle, a symbol of limits she believed she had finally escaped. And with each passing hour, the distance between us grew, turning excitement into heartbreak I never saw coming. The moment she told me I needed to leave is one I will never forget. Not because it was loud or dramatic, but because of how calm and final it sounded. There was no argument, no raised voices, no anger exploding into the room. She stood there with her arms crossed, speaking in a measured tone, as if she had already rehearsed the words in her head. She said she needed space, that her life was changing, and that it would be better if I wasn't around while she figured things out. Each sentence felt carefully chosen, distant, and painfully deliberate. I tried to reason with her. I reminded her that this was our home, that I had been there through every stage of her life, every struggle and success. She listened, but her eyes didn't soften. Instead, she repeated that this was what she wanted, that I needed to respect her boundaries. The word, boundaries, stung more than anything else, because it turned love into a line I was no longer allowed to cross. In that moment, I realized she wasn't asking me to leave, she had already decided. I went to my room and packed a small bag. I didn't know how long I would be gone, and I was too numb to think clearly. As I folded clothes, memories came rushing in: birthdays, late-night talks, moments when she had leaned on me for comfort and reassurance. Each item I packed felt like a piece of my life being quietly erased. I moved slowly, hoping she might change her mind, but the house stayed silent. When I stepped outside, the door closed behind me with a soft click, a sound so ordinary it felt cruel. I stood there for a moment, staring at the familiar front porch, unsure of where to go or what to do next. I hadn't prepared for this, emotionally or practically. I walked away carrying nothing but a bag and a heavy sense of disbelief, wondering how everything had unraveled so fast. That night, I stayed with someone who barely knew the situation, offering polite sympathy but no real understanding. Lying awake, I replayed the conversation over and over, searching for a moment where I could have said something differently. I told myself it was temporary, that once the shock of the money wore off, she would realize how wrong this was. Holding on to that hope was the only thing that kept me from breaking completely. But as the hours passed, reality began to settle in. I wasn't just displaced from a house, I had been pushed out of my daughter's life. The feeling was deeper than sadness. It was a kind of emptiness that left me questioning my worth and my place in the world. I had raised her, protected her, and sacrificed for her. Yet there I was, alone, wondering how love could be so easily overshadowed by money. The 3 days after I was forced to leave passed slowly, each hour heavier than the last. I tried to keep myself busy, to distract my mind from the ache that refused to fade. But every quiet moment brought her face back into my thoughts. I wondered if she missed me at all, or if the excitement of her new world had already erased me. I checked my phone more times than I care to admit, half expecting a message that never came. The silence hurt almost as much as being thrown out. On the 3rd day, just as I was beginning to accept that I might never hear from her again, there was a knock at the door. It was hesitant, uneven, nothing like the confident way she used to arrive home. When I opened it, I barely recognized the person standing in front of me. Her eyes were red and swollen, her shoulders slumped, and the confidence she had carried so proudly was gone. She looked smaller somehow, as if the weight of the world had pressed down on her all at once. She didn't speak at first. She just stood there, breathing shakily, tears streaming down her face. Then she whispered my name. and everything I had been holding inside threatened to break free. She told me things had gone wrong almost immediately. People she trusted had rushed her into signing documents she didn't fully understand. Deals were falling apart. Promises were being broken. The money that had seemed like a dream was already becoming a nightmare. She said she felt trapped, surrounded by voices telling her what to do, all of them louder than her own. She admitted she didn't know who to trust anymore. The confidence that once pushed me out of her life had been replaced by fear and confusion. As she spoke, I saw how overwhelmed she was, how unprepared she had been for the reality that came with sudden wealth. Then she did something I never expected. She asked for my help, not my money, not my connections, but my guidance. She said she needed someone who cared about her, someone who wasn't trying to take advantage of her. Hearing those words cut deep, because they came with the unspoken acknowledgement of what she had done to me. She apologized, her voice breaking as she admitted she had made a terrible mistake. In that moment, I felt a mix of emotions: hurt, relief, anger, and love all colliding at once. Part of me wanted to remind her of the pain she had caused, of how easily she had discarded me. But another part of me saw my child standing there, scared and vulnerable, realizing too late that money couldn't replace trust or wisdom. The knock at the door wasn't just a request for help. It was the sound of reality catching up with her, and of a lesson neither of us would ever forget. When she finished speaking, the air between us felt heavy, filled with everything that had been left unsaid. I looked at her and saw both the child I had raised and the adult she was struggling to become. In that moment, I knew I had a choice to make, one that would define not just our relationship, but the kind of person I wanted to be. I could turn her away, remind her of the pain she had caused, and let her face the consequences alone. A part of me felt that urge strongly, because the wound she left behind was still raw. But as I stood there, listening to her quiet sobs, I realized that holding onto bitterness would only deepen the damage. Revenge might have offered temporary satisfaction, but it would have cost us something far more valuable. I invited her inside and let her sit down. That simple act wasn't about forgiveness, yet it was about choosing compassion over pride. I told her I would help, but only if she was willing to listen, to slow down, and to rebuild trust one step at a time. We spent hours talking, not about money, but about responsibility, patience, and the importance of understanding what you agreeing to before you sign your name. I explained that wealth magnifies everything, both strength and weakness, and without discipline, it can destroy as easily as it can provide. She listened carefully, no longer interrupting, no longer dismissing my words. For the first time since the inheritance, she truly heard me. Helping her didn't mean fixing everything overnight. It meant guiding her back to herself, reminding her of the values she had learned long before money entered her life. I encouraged her to seek independent advice, to take time before making decisions, and to distance herself from anyone who pressured her. More importantly, I made it clear that trust, once broken, takes time to restore. She accepted that, understanding that forgiveness wasn't automatic, but something she would have to earn. As the days passed, I saw change, not the excitement of sudden wealth, but a quieter, steadier resolve. She began to ask questions instead of making demands. She acknowledged her mistakes openly, without excuses. Watching her grow through this experience reminded me that even painful lessons can lead to wisdom if they refaced honestly. In the end, the choice I made wasn't about money at all. It was about family, about choosing to guide rather than abandon, and about showing her that love doesn't disappear when things go wrong. The fortune that nearly tore us apart became the very thing that taught her what truly matters. And for me, helping her wasn't a weakness, it was a reminder that some values are worth protecting, no matter the cost. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe. These are real lessons, real emotions, and real stories you won't hear anywhere else.